Hey, Unwell listeners, thank you for joining us today. It is Her Huddles, episode 13. We are stoked that you are here. Welcome to the morning for Burnout Recovery, where we talk about not doing more, but giving your mind and body permission to slow down. In this season, especially in the winter, often it's like go, 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 set goals, do all these things, which isn't wrong. But in a season where we feel burnt out, allowing ourselves to come back to that calm place, allowing ourselves to take more small, sustainable steps is our goal or our hope for this discussion. One of the reasons that we as millennials specifically may feel we're on the trend or the trajectory towards burnout is we're the sandwich generation earlier than expected. We're the first digital generation expected to be on always. Most student debt carrying generation. We're also most likely to be working multiple jobs or side hustles. If we were to win a superlative award, it would be most likely to feel guilty resting. So that's kind of setting the stage for why burnout happens or why we could be headed towards that. And then we'll get into the details of practical solutions and ways that we can address it. And our hope really is the recovery, the healing, the hope, and moving in that direction. Jen, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you might think that this is a stark pivot, but I'm going to connect the dots for you this week on our unpopular opinion. Our unpopular opinion this week is really on the topic of pickles and olives. So, are you a pickles and olives person, Becca? Do you like one? Do you like both? Do you like neither?
I love both. I can adjust to green olives, varying olives, but I love a black olive and I love pickles.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay.
I am a fan of both. But I know a lot of people who just only enjoy pickles and they just cannot even stand olives or vice versa. So I just think it's interesting.
I would say, so in my household, we have two kids. And so Nick and I often will be like, your child likes this, or my child is more like me because this. Just fun. We love each other. We're very committed.
Yeah.
Though, this is one topic where I'm like, I have one. I have exposed my kids to the fact that they ask for extras of pickles and they will line their fingers with olives and they love to cute. And so what I would say in that is 3/4 of us are pickle and olives people. So yes, it's a win. But let me tell you, one of my dearest friends, she's like, if there's olives on that pizza, don't even think about ordering it. And we share a lot of things. And so I hear you both from closest people around me. And then in general, people are either yay or nay. I don't know who's in the middle with them. Why do you think that is? Why aren't people in the middle with it? Why does it sit one way or the other?
I don't know. I feel like because the flavors maybe are so strong. My husband is pro pickle, strong anti olive.
Okay.
So we have to work around that in our recipes. So we picked pickles and olives because they are basically just burnout for your taste buds. Massive stimulation, no chill. So that is our unpopular opinion for the week. We want to know, community, wild and well, do you guys like pickles, olives, both, neither? Tell us.
I love that. That's a good point though. Overstimulated. Many people have too much happening in the mouth. So I can hear you.
Yeah.
And what about the word of the week? Bringing it back in even more grounded. What's the word of the week for us?
Yes. So drawing us back to our topic of this week, burnout recovery. Our word of the week for burnout recovery comes from Aboriginal Australia. And there's a practice within this community called Didi, which is a word from the Daly River region that means inner deep listening and quiet and still awareness. So it's sort of their contemplative way of slowing down, listening deeply to yourself, others, the land around you, letting your nervous system settle and to actually heal itself instead of just pushing through. And so I think that this use of didiri and thinking about this word can be a lens for us on this topic of burnout recovery as we talk about the process of gentle and slow healing and attentive listening to ourselves.
I have 4 quotes that I live my life by. One of them is from an Aboriginal woman from Australia. Her name's Lila Watson. If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And from a young age, working in the healing industry, the educational industry, where there's hierarchical patterns and relationships, I've really tried hard to look at it through that lens of when I show up to my workday, when I show up, what's the purpose I bring, knowing that I actually probably am learning and experiencing life just as much as the person that I'm helping, since I'm in the helping industry. And so between Miss Lila Watson and then this, oh my gosh, what a powerful culture to say, hey, this is how you can actually do life well or life to the full with intentionality, with understanding what weeks past it was today for you, tomorrow for me, right? Another indigenous culture to just say, how do we start to say we both symbiotically, mutually get to do life together? And that includes the ups and the downs, and then also some of the healing recovery too.
Well, I was gonna, yeah, I could kick us off into our topic just by asking. I would love to ask you on this topic of burnout recovery. How do we think about the difference between being tired and being burnt out?
Yeah. Not an expert in this, but what I would say from what I've seen in working with people, tired is my body is exhausted. I need rest or I need some sort of recovery. Once I get that, then I can bounce back and have more energy. Maybe it's fitness and working out. Maybe it's with better nutrition. Maybe it's with a good night's sleep, but it's practical solutions. So that's what I would say tired. Then burnout is that it includes tiredness, but it doesn't dissipate with normal recovery tactics like time off work, free weekend, or even a vacation. It's that we wake up and stay tired. One other thing that I would say is often that burnout affects us to our core and it starts to make us think about identity. So tiredness stays in the body here. How do I say this? Whereas I would say that burnout then becomes a identity piece in the sense that it's like we start questioning bigger. Is this what God has for me? Am I enough? Why do I show up every morning? What am I supposed to do in my life? Do I matter? Right? That starts to be burnout when we think about work, when we think about relationships, when we think it usually has to do around work. But sometimes burnout can come in a relationship where it's like, I'm giving and giving and giving, and I don't feel that reciprocated back to me. So, really coming to tired is I can find that recovery quickly. And the recovery of burnout takes time. It's like a slow burn, but it takes time. And so we'll go into that in a little bit. I have a question for you. In your life, do you feel like burnout for you is that slow burn? Are you aware of it? Or are you more like, hey, rearview mirror, peace. Oh, yeah, here's all these other stepping stones that led me to burnout, but I didn't recognize it till I was already out of the job or on to the next thing.
I think over the years I've gotten better. Burnout snowball is sort of like accumulating. Okay, I'm approaching burnout for me. I'm not there yet, but I see it on some sort of near-term horizon or runway. I'm going to put up a good fight, because I don't want to get there. And for me that looks like being in tune with sort of like what my body is telling me and taking things like in early warning signs for me are things, okay, what are like the activities that I usually love to do. And if I start not wanting to do those or being disinterested in those, that's usually an early indicator for me. If you can't find enjoyment in the things that normally bring you joy and relaxation, you're probably approaching a danger zone with burnout. This past weekend, I did not make a single social plan. We were just at home. I just need to be okay with not seeing all my friends this weekend or not doing anything social this weekend because I know that recharge for myself, just being at home, getting good sleep, getting my exercise, eating well, that's really what's going to give me more space in between where I am currently and further away from like that burnout line that I don't want to be at.
Fair to say or accurate to say that you're in the tired zone, yet this weekend allowed, as you're moving in tired towards the burnout, it brought you back to like, oh, my energy is more full. Doesn't mean that like burnout still can't come. It may. But the more weekends you recharge, the more time you have, you're able to then have more energy to move towards life, fulfilling life and life to the full.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking as you were sharing that is you brought up how you're noticing it in your body or in your own life. One of the big key differences is apathy. When we get to a place as we'll go into women since her huddles are about women, is feeling numb instead of emotional. A lot of times we as women hold many different emotions and we escalate them or we have bigger spectrums than men. And so when we move though from tired to tired may mean that I have a bigger emotion, right? More accurate indicator that I am actually in burnout or moving very close to that is that actually I'm like, yeah, sure. Or, or, and that becomes a consistent numb response or going from, I love this job, this person, this thing to now I feel nothing. I'm so exhausted to the place that my energy can just not hit that level. And it switches from sleep gives me enough to even that next morning, I still am responding to Nick of, yeah, sure. Okay.
Like apathetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
For me, I find it scary when I start to get apathetic because I'm not normally like that. So I would agree with you 100% that, like, for some of us, and we all probably have different signs and different indicators, personally, depending on our personalities, you're almost like resigned to the energy and the excitement or the joy, like you mentioned.
Yes, and I think that's that piece right there is I'm resigned as opposed to I'm reserved, right? Because many people are reserved people, calm. And so response back of, yeah, sure, that's great. It has a smile or it has an enjoyment. You brought that up earlier, an enjoyment that's, of course, babe, I'll go get it. So maybe it's 3 words, 5 words, and so it's simple. It's not real expressive and all of that, but it's filled with meaning. Whereas, sure, okay, yeah, our body language changes, our tone changes, and that indicates that something is going on apathetically. So that is apathy is one of the scariest places we can be. That's why I say even politically, us seeing people who are charged in relationships, in individual lives for people that matter so much to us, the scarier part is when a person becomes resigned to something or apathetic to something, because that means that they are no longer willing to fight or willing to push through and be curious. And in my own life, when I become apathetic to something, I'm out. I cut ties or I leave the job or I do whatever as opposed to staying in it. Or I can still leave, but in a way that's healthy and like, hey, goodbye. Thank you so much for this. I've moved on to the next opportunity. That's not a burnout statement. That's a, oh, I'm really grateful for this opportunity that I had here. And now my evolution of life is turning a different corner.
I also wonder with burnout, I wonder if there's a group of people listening. I can resonate with this, which is like I get energized by work and projects and solving things. And sort of that tipping point of like when too much is too much of some of those things can sort of be a very delicate sort of like tipping of the scales. Again, we all have different tendencies of do and don't sort of fulfill us and bring us that enthusiasm and like zest for life. But I almost wonder sometimes for me if my ego gets in the way of admitting that I feel burnt out. No, I can do it. I can do it all. Nope, I can do it.
Yes.
And then to stop and say, no, I'm burnt out. And then like, what does that mean if I'm burnt out? Probably means like I need to step away in some way. I don't know if ego is at play ever for people in like arriving at burnt out.
I like that piece, or that's resonating with me, arriving at burnt out. I think the initial tired is life is happening, right? We're caregiving for people, we're holding space at work, we're trying to tackle the next big option and opportunity. We're just trying to do the mundane left, right, left, right, left, right. The arriving at burnout, how you just said that, Jen, really resonates in the sense of why didn't I take that weekend where I said no to social? Why didn't I ask for help? Why didn't I bring up my insecurities or gaps or understandings and say, hey, can you help me there? As you brought that up, for example, I'm thinking of at the university I work for, I'm creating a course right now and we're redoing it. And so I'll get to go to DC in March and film it and all these things. And it's a graduate level course. I was asked to do it back in June. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Throw it on the plate, right? Talk about ego. Oh yeah, it's another opportunity to learn. I don't really think much about it. Nick's like, ask me all these questions. I'm like, yeah, we'll solve it. We'll solve it. We'll solve it. And in hindsight, I probably needed to let it go, but I didn't. And I've learned so much good from it now. But the months of August through November, what am I doing? And I just kept punting the work, punting the work, punting the work. How do I get out of this? Right? My brain started to go, ooh, how can I not engage with it? Because I'm so exhausted. And I shared that with my supervisor. I shared that with my hubby. And they both were like, okay, well, let's talk through how we can get there. Nick was, hey, look at these 4 different ways that it may benefit you, where you can remain curious, where you can learn. And something simultaneously that happened is while and well together, we've hired out other people to do other jobs. So I have more space on my plate. So arriving at burnout for this particular course creation didn't happen and actually course corrected because of one, connection to other people, speaking truth. Two, me admitting I need to dig into this more hours than I have created. How can I do that? And then my ego saying, Becca, ask for help. And so that's one prime example. And now I'm stoked. I came off of a 2-hour meeting and I'm stoked to create it and get to utilize it with students. And it will be excellent because of the people who have already done it and because of the work that's being done in it. And so I get really excited and I see that. And I'm wondering what we can do with that phrase of arriving at burnout, because that makes it feel actionable of I don't have to get on that plane that's taken off. Or, oh, that train that's heading straight for burnout. Let me stop 2 stops before that at exhaustion. Let my ego come out of that at the place of exhaustion as opposed to going to burnout and arriving at exhaustion saying, hey, Jen, can you help me? Hey, Jen, could you bring me a meal? Or on the flip side, seeing someone else that's gotten off at exhaustion as opposed to burnout and saying, hey, what do you need? Or let me just bring you something because I know you well enough to just show up. Let me go distract you. So those are my thoughts, but that's really resonating with me. And taking those weekends, doing those tools to live a life that says, let's stop before we get to the burnout.
We all probably have different things that make us feel recharged in different ways. For me, sort of going hermit crab, and for other people, it might be getting out there and being social and sort of really separating from those things that are making you feel burnt out. So it can look so many different ways. What you mentioned earlier about your example, I'm wondering how key community is when we
Mm.
talk about burnout recovery. I don't think
Yes.
that's an initial connection I make in my mind, but even in your story, it sounded community and having some of those people and systems of people around you was really helpful in helping you move out of burnout and more into, no, I got this. I have enthusiasm back for this project.
So answering that or sharing on my understanding of community-based healing is that we heal faster in community because we get emotional validation. So we talked about before apathy. Apathy leads to isolation. Emotional response leads to connection. Sometimes it's hard drawn connection where then we have to work through it, but often that connection leads to something much stronger because it says, "Oh, we worked through this together. Oh, because you were there for me or I was there for you when you needed that healing." And it's socially biologically within us. Another one is co-regulation, healing by being around regulated people. So in my moments of dysregulation, so my body's responding, maybe I'm hot, maybe I'm sweaty, maybe I'm feeling anger, I'm more prone to that than I am to being cool or ice or whatnot and heading towards that way. And so within that though, I was thinking about there's a phrase now that Nick and I use, and I say, give me 5 minutes, especially as a mom now. Here's the key piece I want women to hear is I say it without apology. So I say, give me 5 minutes with zero guilt attached to it. I don't have to apologize for why I need the 5 minutes. I don't have to have a reason or a justification for why I need the 5 minutes. I say, hey, just give me 5 minutes. And usually where that comes is so I can finish my own meal without the kids climbing on me. That's a huge boundary now. And that might sound so silly, but my kids love me well and I love them well. And we are hooked to each other. And when I'm eating, I've come to a place so that I don't have burnout. This is what's coming up for me here is making meals can become a burden that then I can feel isolated in, that I then have apathy. Let's just order something. But if I do that consistently over and over again, that's where burnout leads to, or I arrive at burnout. And so one of the ways I was feeling exhausted, I'd cook and clean. And Nick was, hey, what's something that you need? Get to the root of what actually is happening. And I said, here I make this meal. And then I don't actually get to sit like a normal human being and eat it for even 10 minutes because someone wants the next thing. And we're really working on my kids loving their father well, and they do, but sometimes it shows preference to me. And so we're like, nope, dad loves you. Go sit with dad. Oh, dad's done. And so if there's no food on the person's plate, the adult's plate, they can go sit with Grammy. They could go sit with you. They could sit with my dad, with Nick, whoever. But because I make the meal and I sit down last and I'm a slower eater and I enjoy my meal, it takes a little bit longer. Hey, give me 5 more minutes. I don't have to apologize that I'm not done early. I don't have to apologize that, nope, you don't get to sit on mom. That's a really tangible example that's coming up right now. And it's allowed me to enjoy meal times so much more as a mom than I did for a season of life for sure, because I just felt so touched out or so needed, but not, not in like, oh, I'm so loved, as in task after task after task after task. So that's one thing that was coming up for me as far as community is saying, hey, Nick, I need this. Can you help support me in this? And then putting those boundaries up and following through or offering that. And then also verbally me stating what is my need and not having an apology attached to it. So I think those are some community based. And then also the village model. This is the last piece is it takes a village. That's to raise kids, but that's in general is when I can't hold my arms up or I can't do X, Y, or Z, to know that I have people around me. That's happened when we went through cancer. That's happened post kids. That's happened through death in our family. That's happened through some of our darkest moments. People showed up in very practical ways and even to distract, right? And to make us laugh. And that's been so beautiful too. So that's how we're designed is to be in community. And when we don't, we come back into that isolation, apathy, and burnout. I have a question though back to you as we head then into the recovery side of it is what are your thoughts or what's the biggest misconception millennials have about rest and recovery? Here you just shared how good it was to have a weekend productive, healing, helpful, restful, to have a weekend of no social. So opposite of community, but no social. And what's the biggest misconception of rest and recovery?
I think maybe the biggest misconception of rest and recovery might be that it has to look a certain way. That weekend that I described, it's sort of going hermit crab and going inside. It doesn't have to look like that because that is what works for me. doesn't mean it's what works for you or the next person. That's the thing that comes to mind for me. And in terms of misconception, is that it has to look a specific way. You can try many different things. The other thing that I think that is interesting, like this episode is airing in winter, and I am someone who live in Colorado. I am someone who loves the summer, and I often dread the winter, and I don't enjoy the sort of cold and the sort of natural hibernation type reality that I often notice as a pattern for myself. And I think other people may agree with that, especially if you live in colder climates. But I saw something the other day about this idea of winter and how it is the season that so many of us love to complain about, but it is almost secretly designed for burnout recovery. And all around us, you can see nature downshifting, down regulating. Trees are dropping their leaves. Animals are not out and about as they used to be. The light, there's less light. It's like cueing us to naturally slow our rhythms down. And so this winter, I've tried to lean into that a bit in the sense of how can I treat winter zooming out, looking at my whole year, not just today, but zooming out and the rhythms of our lives and seasons of our lives, and viewing or treating winter as something not to push through or just get to the end of so I can get to summer, but treating it as a built-in antidote to burnout, and how, these couple of months are like helping restore me and giving permission to do less and feel more and like actually restore my nervous system. And so I think that has been something that I've been sitting with the last couple of weeks and thinking about this topic too. So I invite anybody else to do that as well.
Yes.
If you have been a historical winter complainer or adversary to winter.
And I think that you are responding to the body connected to nature. So even that connection, yes, we talked about social to other humans earlier, but then that's social, or that's a connection to nature and saying the design of animals and trees and plants and the universe and how God created us to be. And I'm curious, who designed New Year's resolutions? What commercialism thing was that designed, in the sense that if we're tracking how you just said, it would make sense to have a March resolution or a May resolution or something in the spring to summer that says, this is when I'm going to step into this space, because from December through February, I'm going to hunker down and really sustain through this time. And you're doing that beautifully, right? Like your work is the busiest it's been and will continue to be for some time. And yet, although your life is very full and you're exhausted at the end of the day, you still wake up and you have energy to go again. And I wonder if it is because you're creating these other rhythms along the circadian rhythm and along what nature's saying. Jen, rest. Yes, you have to show up to work. Yes, you need food on the table, but rest when you get to rest, because we don't need that extra side hustle because we're millennials. Oh, you don't need to show up and go party because you're in your 30s on a Friday night. Go to bed at 9:30 or watch your favorite movie, or right, some of those healthier rhythms that for whatever reason right now we live in a world that says go, go, go and do, do, do. January resolutions are a huge thing. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think that New Year's resolutions brings does not match necessarily that wintering, just sort of down regulate, downshift. And that's an interesting observation. I hadn't connected those two things before, but I think it's very accurate.
Nerdy here. Historically, it started because of the Romans. Again, New Year's resolutions didn't start because of the Romans, but like Romans, Hebrew, many different ancient origins believed, because crops would not exist, to your point, right? They're in the downturn. So crops didn't exist from end of November until February, depending on the region, but all regions did not offer it then. And so it was a wind down period where it just be sustained, figure it out. And so again, who brought it in? Industrial revolution? I don't know. I'm going to do that history research and say, how can we counteract that? Because I think that is why we get to then spring and people are, I'll speak for myself. Where's my college spring break at? Or where's my like warm
Totally.
vacation? Where's my beach at where I can just grab a book and detach and read and calm again? So those are some of the things, as you brought in rest, is how do we rest? How do we learn to rest? We are in a hustle culture. And so, and an expensive culture and many things, but how do we learn to actually rest? We've talked about Sabbaths. We've talked about digital Sabbaths and detoxes. We've talked about taking time and creating healthy rhythms and rituals. And so a few other things I would say heading into that is there's breath work, there's progressive muscle relaxation. So there's individual items that we talk about in 60 seconds to center. but it takes time. And so whether it's going to the gym, whether it's saying no to social things if we need that because we're so extroverted or so social but not extroverted, some of those things, community-based healing, and then sustainable life design. So boundaries, workload, morning and night routines, tech habits, and then what other relationships do we have with rest and starting to dismantle those so then we can build them up. What I will say from a professional standpoint is burnout recovery takes time. And that's probably one of the hardest things for us as millennials and younger is we're used to quick fixes. We want the medicine right now. We have access to responses and information right now. And acute burnout, research shows takes about 2 to 6 weeks. Moderate burnout, and I know people are going to have a gut punch, but is about 3 to 6 months to recover from that. It's taken that long to get there. We may not have had that awareness we talked about earlier, but the moderate burnout takes 3 to 6 months. Severe burnout is 6 months to 18 months. So a half a year to a year and a half for me to say, I feel myself again. For some moms, that may be after having a child of burnout with my body. I'm so exhausted. I want energy back. It takes till roughly, they say, research says 2 years. OB-GYNs and medical professionals will say it takes 2 years post delivery to get our bodies back, to feel energy again, and things like that. So I share those because it does take time. However, you can feel better in weeks. So the fun part about this, or the realistic and the hope-filled part, is slow healing is still healing. If anything that any of us take away from it is slow healing is still healing. So how do I start to say no to a few things like you did this weekend, right? I think I even texted you and you're like, hey, I was working, but I didn't do anything else. And then also, what other pieces do we need to start enjoying life? Because we don't have to be fully out of burnout. We don't have to fully be recovered to start enjoying life. We can see how fun the sun feels on our face, or we can start to see these little things and that apathy starts to melt and comes back to, I can feel again. It might be a soft little ember within me, or it might be a bright light, but that's the recovery piece of it. Do you have any thoughts on recovery? Otherwise, we'll head into practical tools.
I think the biggest thing on recovery for me is sort of know yourself, know the things that give you joy typically. And even, I mean, there are times even for myself where I do feel burnt out or close to burnt out. I really don't want to go salsa dancing at 9:00 on a Sunday. And I'm like, that, just my reaction, my perception of that is, okay, that's an indicator. And I sort of have to do the discernment of, do I push through that and go because I know that it's good for me? And look at me smiling. I know that activity will recharge me in some way, even if I'm initially resisting it. And there are other nights where I'm like, no, I'm literally just too tired. I just cannot, I won't enjoy it. I won't be fully present. So I'm not going to go. But I think that takes like a knowing of yourself and like a discernment to say, like, I am going to make myself go do that thing that I think will help recharge me.
Love that. That's a great way for us to segue then into coming to this place of permission, of perspective. The 60 seconds to center today is, you are not responsible for anyone's needs, only your breath. For the next 60 seconds, inhale gently, exhale slowly. Let your body step out of performance mode and into permission mode and into perspective mode. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. Let your body step out of performance mode and into permission mode and perspective mode. When you're ready, slowly come back to your natural breath. And why this works is because we as millennials and many people live perpetually in productivity mode. And to your point, Jen, the more perspective we can have, the more we can individualize it to our own stories. Yes, there's a collective through thread, but have that perspective on our own of, am I performing? Is it the ego? Is it exhaustion? Why don't I want to go on a Sunday night? Do I say yes to it? Do I not? Coming back into the body and just saying my permission. I can give myself permission to breathe. I don't have to hold the 1,000 things I have to make a decision on. I can just come to that, back to that breath for a minute. 60 seconds to centered is 1 minute off duty. What do you have for us for a journal prompt this week?
Journal prompt for this week is, what have I been too tired or even too apathetic about to hear from myself? And how would it feel to write it down without having to fix it yet? Just leave that there.
That speaks for itself. It's a hard reflection to get there. Beautiful. Thank you, listeners. As always, we are grateful for you on Her Huddles every Monday morning. You can tune in, and so grateful for you all to be a part of this community. It allows us to be in the grind and also have fun. So from Jen and I, thank you. Be well. Join the huddle next week. We'll see you soon.
See you.